Here we come. Everybody's logging in. I see you coming, logging in. We'll be starting here in just a couple of minutes. Right, there we go. We'll start now. We'll see how close my clock is on my wall. My clock on the wall is about 30 seconds behind. So we'll wait until my clock on the wall says 9 o'clock, give folks a few more seconds to log in, and then we'll get started. So, okay. I think we have a plan in place, and we should be in pretty good shape. Um, okay. So, good morning and welcome to the first of 3 webinars on proven countermeasures. This is a series of a review of a whole bunch of proven countermeasures from the New York State Department of Transportation's Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan and the Federal Highway Administration's proven countermeasures. Um, we're going to be focusing on the ones with roadway departures for obvious reasons, as you'll hear in just a minute. My name is David Orr. I'm the director here with New York State LTAP, Cornell Local Roads Program. Here in Ithaca, it's a lovely day. The cherry trees are all in bloom. Some of the magnolias are coming out. So it's a beautiful day. If you're not sure, get a chance, get a walk. It's going to be warm this afternoon over most of the state. Okay, so we're started here and we're launched. Now, there is a handout, and you should open up your chat pod. I'll talk about that in a minute and again. But there's a handout that has links to the resources that we use to help get this webinar developed. There's the roadway departure safety action plan from New York State. There's our workshop manual on solutions for safer roads and streets. There's other information we've gotten from FHWA and the Department of Transportation, including the Proven Safety Countermeasures booklet from FHWA. And again, you might want to download that. There'll be a link that pops up in the chat so you don't have to remember anything. A couple of reminders and notes. And again, it's a beautiful day. I got this one yesterday. But down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see some settings, audio settings if you have any issues. You should open up the chat pod, and once you've opened the chat pod up, we can send you some notes. It's not a two-way street. That particular item is just a one-way. If you do have a question for us, go over to the Q&A, open that pod up, and put your questions in. We'd love to see your questions, and we'll be using the Q&A throughout this webinar along with polls, and we'll talk about the polls in just a minute. And we may be asking you to raise your hand some. Now, this particular webinar is worth 1 PDH, but remember, it's only the person registered who gets the credit. And it's, if you care, it matters of course, but that's not as critical as it used to be here in New York State for getting your PDH continuing ed credit. Now, if you're from another state, you'll have to check with your LTAP center, but hopefully you'll get something out of these series of webinars. We're going to use the same handout all 3 webinars because the links aren't going to change, the resources aren't going to change, and we're just going to go through a whole bunch of different proven countermeasures. But to help me, because I'm talking to a screen, I want to see who's online. So we're going to do a bit of a welcome. We're going to be using polls. So again, if you open up the chat pod, there'll be a link, or you can type in www.pollev.com/DavidOrrPE. And we're going to be doing a whole bunch of questions to help me get started. And we're going to be using the polls throughout. If you can't access the polls for whatever reason, you can put your answer in the Q&A. So first off, who do you work for? Do you work for town, county, city or village, state or fed, tribal, MPO, metropolitan planning organization, for those who don't know, a consulting firm, a contractor, or are you an honest person and you're working for the weekend? Because everybody's working for the weekend. Let's see, we got a bunch of counties, some towns, state and fed, city and village. Ooh, nice variety of folks. Okay, it's good to see. Okay, and we have somebody over in the Q&A who popped in that they're work for a consulting firm. Okay, so what is your job? What do you do? Are you administrator, highway superintendent, engineer, planner, field crew, supervisor, board member? Um, None of the above. If you put none of the above, put in the Q&A what that is. And we'll see if a few people I see have caught my little bit of fun in terms of if you actually read the choices are. So about 6% of you are doing whatever the boss tells you to do. Most of you are engineers. Again, that's fine. Cool. And we got a DPW director and a highway engineer listed in the Q&A. Okay. So it's mostly engineers, but it's also some highway superintendents, some planners. Okay. And then where are you from here in New York State or where elsewhere? Where are you from? Where do you work? Let's see if we get a variety of folks here. There's about 100 of you online, so we should get a whole bunch of dots. Oh, we got some folks from Connecticut, out in the island, uh, North Country, Albany area. Good variety. I like it. Okay. And we have our friend in Lake Ontario, though. He's got someone up near Toronto there. Okay. I didn't know the Wi-Fi got that far out, but that's okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you very much. That helps me. I get a sense you're a bit of an urban crowd, but there's some rural folks too. That's good to see. Now, what we're really talking about when talking about proven countermeasures comes from a series of sources, and a lot of this has to deal with the New York State Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan and the call for funds that they released, and I'll briefly mention that. Now, each of these three webinars we're doing that deals with the proven countermeasures for roadway departure, we're going to repeat some of these things each time so they're self-standing. You don't have to go to all three. You can just get individuals. We might not repeat everything here at the beginning, but I do want you to make sure you download that safety action plan, download the appendices, and again, the link to that is available on the handout. And if you can't get the handout, you can also email us at clrp@cornell.edu, and we'll get you a copy of it, or send us a note in the Q&A with your email address. Make sure you download the appendices. Now, when we're talking about roadway departures, what do we mean by that? Well, a roadway departure could be a simple head-on where somebody essentially uh, goes and crosses the center line. So this is a case with a medical emergency and somebody essentially crossed over and they hit into a school bus. And the school bus saw them coming, but it wasn't much they could do. That's a roadway departure. It's really someone left where they need to be in the roadway. Roadway departure could be on a multi-lane roadway. In this case, somebody merging onto an interstate had somebody else change lanes without looking and pushed that SUV off their lane, and they rolled 17 times. They survived because equipment and cars, and they had their seatbelt on. But still, not a good day for the particular individual involved. And the persons who were involved in the initial that caused this, they kept driving. They didn't even stop, but luckily there was a trooper involved. Safe. And then, of course, a roadway departure could be somebody who leaves the lane. And for most of the two lanes, we worry a lot about this, where someone hits a fixed object. And of course, trees are one of the worst fixed objects, as we talked about in last week's webinars. Because if you hit a tree at 30 miles an hour, it's probably going to be a severe injury. But if you hit a tree at 43 or 55 miles an hour in the simulated test, you can see the tree is getting into the passenger compartment and is going to lead to probably a fatality, if not at least a serious injury that's life-changing. Now, here in New York State, how many of those have we had over the last 6-7 years? Well, this is a plot of the data that's available from the Crash Location Engineering Analysis Repository. I think I got that right, clear. But other databases out there, and you can see that the trend is relatively flat. I mean, we did have a bit of a dip last year. Hopefully that's beginning of a new trend coming down, and that's our goal, and it's why we're talking with folks. But it's still not where we'd like it to be. The goal really should be getting towards zero. And we don't want to see fatalities and serious injuries. And the roadway departure concept comes around because we want to keep the vehicle on the road, reduce the potential for the crash, and then minimize that severity, and then rinse and repeat at any site where we've got issues. So in terms of keeping the vehicle on the road, we're going to talk about those proven countermeasures that are related to helping people stay essentially where they belong. Stripes, wider lanes, good signage, things like that. We're going to try to look at proven countermeasures that reduce the potential for a crash by having good clear zones, by having wide shoulders, good safety edge, things like that. And then, of course, if someone does get involved with a crash, we want to minimize the severity of that crash. So we want to use breakaway hardware and barriers and things like that. And there's overlap, of course. But the concept is keep people in the lane that won't have a crash. If they have to have a crash, let's make it as minimum in terms of severity as possible. Now, we've talked about several times on webinars over the last few weeks, and we'll be mentioning this again. There is a call for projects right now, roadway departure local call for projects from the State Department of Transportation. If you have any questions, please email them. Andrew Sattinger will help you out. And let's see if Andrew's on the call today. Don't see him on the first blush, but I might miss them. Sometimes the alphabetization isn't what I'd expect. And then there is a call for the funds. There's a web page you can go to look up the details that we talk about. And again, all of these are in the handout. And by magic, if you hadn't opened up your chat pod until lately, it'll pop back up there so you can download that link. And how much money are we talking about? People care about that. I don't blame you. Money drives a lot of things. The call for funds. First off, I want you to realize it's for local roads only. It's not state highways. These funds are only for the local system. It's $90 million, okay? And 10 million of that is being set aside specifically to develop local road safety plans, okay? They are not due until June 13th, so you've got time, but you do want to start getting all of your ducks in a row so that you're ready to submit. Now, in terms of what's eligible, well, there's several things. We talked about them in last week's webinar, and that's recorded if you want to go see it. And that you're eligible if you're in one of the hotspot locations, as the state found when they looked at all crashes throughout the state. You're eligible if it meets the criterion within the Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan, or if you have your own local road safety plan. Those absolutely are eligible. That means all roads if you've got plans. If you want to implement one of the proven countermeasures that we're going to talk about over the next 3 webinars, you're also eligible, but realize you're competing with those who might have higher priority because they have the hotspot criterion or they have a local road safety plan. But there is some emphasis areas, and we'll talk about that the state would really like to see people do, so you can still get funds to implement some of these proven countermeasures. And those proven countermeasures are ones that come from the Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan or from the FHWA's list of proven countermeasures that are roadway departure related, or if you've got something within a local road safety plan or a data-driven local plan. But no, most of yours are probably going to be in this list. So what are we going to cover over the next 3 weeks? Well, we're going to today talk about those that are related to essentially signs, marking, and lighting, helping people figure out where they need to be using visual and some auditorial cues. Hear things, vibration, things like that, rumble strips. Next week, we're going to talk about improvements in the geometry of the pavement, where we flatten slopes and widen the roadway out a little bit, make sure the clear zone's good, and then we'll end with talking about breakaway supports, barriers, median barriers, and some just a review of the local road safety plans. That will be doing the 3rd webinar I think that's, I got the dates coming up. So rather than me guessing, I've got the dates on another slide. The goal here is us to figure out which of the proven countermeasures we're going to choose from, okay? So which of our golden eggs, and with the price of eggs, golden eggs, are we going to choose from our proven countermeasures? And we'd like the ones that give us the best bang for the buck. The very first thing we need to do before we decide at all that we're going to do proven countermeasures is you need to have a good inventory. So go out there and make sure you know what you've got. You've got your records from CHIPS. You can go to Clear. If you need to, go out and do a drawing, just drawing what you've got or putting it into GIS. This is a drawing that, and I think I see Jim Markle on here. Jim Markle did when he helped us develop the class and actually taught it for a while. Had a different name back then, but this drawing is still valid. You can do a drawing like this and you can see, hey, I've probably got some places I need to look. So if I just come in here and just think about it, let me get a pen color that's going to make sense. Let me do blue today. You know, we've got a sharp curve down here. We've got a couple of head walls that we noted on a box culvert, okay? We've got some trees that are near an intersection. Maybe they've been hit. We can start getting a sense of things we can look for road safety, even above and beyond roadway departures, okay? But in terms of roadway departures, we're going to focus on signing delineation lighting today. Next Tuesday, we're doing the pavements, the geometric issues, and then on May 1st, next Thursday, we'll be doing improving chances of a safe recovery, and again, reviewing local road safety plans if you don't have one already. Now, for each of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a couple of slides. The first slide will be on where does this fit within the overall concept of the roadway departure issue. In other words, is it really focused on keeping the vehicle on the roadway, reducing the potential for the crash, or minimizing the severity? Though again, there's some overlap. And then what kind of crashes are they really focused on? So if you have your crash information, you want to choose proven countermeasures to mitigate those particular problems, like head-on crashes, rollover crashes, or fixed objects, which are the three criterion for roadway departures we're talking about. And the state added a special criterion on nighttime crashes because we know a lot of severe crashes occur at nighttime. And then are we mainly focused on curves or tangents? Curves are a smaller percentage, but we know they have a higher fraction of the overall crashes, so they tend to be more in a systemic way places we want to spend our money. And then, of course, we're going to focus on whether these are primary, in other words, they're the ones we want to do first, or you might want to consider them if you're out there doing safety improvements anyway, and those will be highlighted when we talk about these. So we'll start with the first one, which is markings, and there actually are two that are listed in the Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan, the appendices, and in the call for funds, but I'm going to combine them together, and that's center line and edge line markings. So with center line markings, we're dealing with trying to keep the vehicle on the roadway. So we, of course, know they're high priorities for head-on because we keep people in the lane. They're really good at night, okay? But even during the day, they can have some value. And of course, we're not as worried about the roadway departures, but they're good on both curves and on tangents. Makes sense. Edge lines, take that same road. We're not as worried about the head-ons with an edge line, but we certainly are worried about rollovers and fixed objects, and of course, just like with center lines, good for curves and for tangents. So together, pavement markings are a proven countermeasure. Now, the FHWA's proven countermeasure is a little different. We'll talk about that in a sec, but we know markings really do help. However, once you decide to put the markings down, do you have the funds to maintain them? Because even if you go through and you do a grant under this call for funds to get started, you've got to then have the maintenance cost to maintain those into the future, okay? And the visual value of lines, we know that. So, electronically, we've removed the lines on this road, and it's a lot harder to see where the edge of the road is. It's a lot harder to see where the center line is, more chances of a crash. So that's why, especially as the traffic goes up, we want to put in markings, okay? We know markings help, and even these markings, which were getting a little faded, really valuable. And for me, lines are most valuable, twilight, okay? Even these lines, which again, you can tell they're a little faded. It has been wet, so there's a little water. Boy, do they really stand out. They really help me driving at the twilight period because that to me is one of the hardest times to drive. So pavement markings we know really help. Now, in terms of the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD, the new one, which is federal plus the state supplement, and yes, the state is working on some updates, and I'll talk about a couple of those in a sec. There are some requirements that exist for putting markings down, okay? So for yellow center lines, it is a standard. In other words, it's a shall, you shall do it. You need yellow center lines essentially on the interstate, of course, but any urban arterials and collectors, okay, that are greater than 20 feet wide with a traffic of over 6,000, okay? And any road that's got more than 3 lanes that's paved. Yeah, 3-lane gravel, that would be weird, but that's what it says. In terms of shoulds, i.e. guidance, you need to do it when the traffic is either over 4,000, and even on rural systems, you should be doing it if it's over 18 feet, or there's over 3,000 vehicles per day, okay? So let's just see, I'm going to make you all work now. My hands are up. Raise your hand, go down to the lower left, raise your hand if you've got roads that meet those criteria. Let's see what y'all think. How many of you have roads that meet those criteria? Yeah. So if it's a shall, you need to do it. If it's a should, you have to document why you're not doing it. And that's not going to be an easy thing to do because we know it really does improve traffic safety. And of course, you may need to do it anyway, and watch the hands all go down. If there's an engineering study that indicates a need, you should be doing it as well. So if you're out there doing a study and the study says, hey, my local road safety plan it says we need stripes, you need to think about putting the stripes in. Now, for the edge line, again, freeways and expressways shall have them, but also rural arterials over 20 feet, over 6,000, it's a shall, and edge lines, it's a should. Okay, so these are the standards in the MUTCD, and if you're not sure whether you have an arterial or collector, I would go to the New York State DOT's functional classification viewer and look it up. Now, one thing you may want to do, you may want to look at whether those roads should stay in those functional classifications. We haven't really updated those as much as we probably should. So you may want to think about doing that. But for now, we're using those as requirements from the MUTCD. Now, in case of the Federal Highway Administration, their proven countermeasure for lines has to deal with wider edge lines. Okay, there's actually very good evidence that they improve safety. So I'm going to introduce you to something called the Crash Modification Clearinghouse, or CMF, Crash Modification Factors Clearinghouse. And the idea is there's a website you can go to, and I checked, it's still active and working, where you can actually look at the expected crash reduction when you add a feature. Okay? In this particular case, going from a 4-inch to a 6-inch wide line. And what they found when they did that was a crash modification factor of about 0.78, i.e., you get a reduction of about 22% in the number of crashes you would expect on a particular roadway by going from a 4-inch to a 6-inch line. So if you've got a place with more crashes than you'd like, maybe you think about widening those lines up. Okay? And you could widen up the center lines as well if you have the space. And of course, that's going to be something you have to think about. Now, let's just ask, what do you think? Are 6-inch pavement markings required in the new MUTCD? I'm doing a pre-thing. Yes, no, not sure. I haven't read the MUTCD. They talked about it. They really did talk about it. And the answer is, you got it right. Yep, it's no. They did not make that a requirement. It says in the guidance that's within the MUTCD, the line shall be 4 or 6 inches. So you can choose between those two, but they did not require the 6-inch markings. 4 inches is the minimum. But again, we know that it improved safety, and it's something you may want to think about adding to your bag of tricks. But can you maintain it? A couple of other proven countermeasures that are out there. There's some pavement markings that you can add to the pavements that'll help. They're not the highest priority. The lines are the highest priority, but if you've got specific locations where you've got issues, you can put markings down. It could be an in-lane pavement marking, such as the words. You just actually put the words that would be on the signs. Curve 45 miles per hour. You put them in the order to drive over them. Here's the key, though. Again, you got to maintain them, and you got to be careful. They can create some slipperiness issues, so make sure you think about that. In Pennsylvania, they did a study, and they found about a 1/3, 33% reduction in the number of crashes on certain key curves. Don't put them on every curve, okay? And there are standards out there, and specifically standards for the optical speed bars. This concept is you put these little bars into the roadway, and it makes the curve look sharper than it really is, okay? You don't have to go in as far as you'd think. It sort of keeps people in their lane. And there are actually standards in the new MUTCD on how to put the markings, and they're really talking about the markings before the curve, though some of the research actually says you may want to continue them into the curve, especially if it's not a constant radius. But the idea is you tighten them up, makes them look sharper than they are, and you slow people down, okay? So do you have, what would be a good location for optical speed bars? I'll let you type in your answers, and then I'm going to show them. In this case, we're not letting you all see everybody else's answers. I'm going to give you 15, 20 seconds, type in your answer, and then we'll see what everybody else is answering here in just a sec. Okay, let's see what y'all come up with. Okay, let's go down here and let's see what y'all have for responses. Yeah, sharp, blind, high-speed curves. You've got a lot of accidents. You might have some specific places you're thinking about. Again, something to think about, but once you do it, can you maintain it? Okay, so it's something to keep in mind. And yeah, spiral curves might be a place where you might want to have them because people may not be used to spiral curves. Now, one that's available, it's listed in the Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan for urban interstates, but it is something you might want to think about. And the idea is you do a grooved in retroreflective marking. In other words, you put your stripes in a groove to protect them from snowplow damage. Again, it's not the highest priority. The first thing is the stripes, but it's a way to make the lines last a little bit longer. And they're really, of course, good at nighttime, primarily on the tangents. Now, I don't have a great picture that shows a close-up of this, but I have one I got from Minnesota DOT putting in what are called mumble strips. They're much thinner. So just to illustrate the concept in your head, you put in a thin groove and you put the lines in the thin groove. Okay? The groove itself is only about 1/10 of an inch deep. Uh, then when you put your 20 mil spheres in there, the plows don't wear them off. And the research has found they last about 5 years the first time you put them down, but when you start reapplying, they build up thickness, they don't hold as well. So by the time you get to the third cycle, you're not getting as long a life compared, we're assuming markings that would be worn off a year normally. So you can get 10 years with 3 applications, that's pretty good, and they stay in really good shape for that period of time. And then you'll have to think about either regrooving things or fixing them up from there. New York State Thruway is doing it, state's doing it in a lot of locations. And again, something you might want to think about and adding to your bag of tricks. Now, another one that is a major emphasis area within the Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan is to make sure your signs are compliant with the MUTCD. It's a high priority activity. It's good for all your curves. And we're going to spend probably more of the time of this particular webinar on this because it's such a high priority. And again, this comes from the MUTCD. So when we're talking about curve signs, um, somebody asked a great question. I'll go ahead and answer that now. I'll go back real quick. Do the grooves trap water, reducing the life cycle of the pavement? That is a concern. You do have to be careful about your drainage when you put them in, okay, when you groove them in. You may even have to put some drainage spots. It usually isn't a major problem, but you're going to have to do the same kind of concern you'd have for rumble strips in some respects. But we'll talk about that when we talk about rumble strips. So in terms of the curve signs, the advisory speed, obviously, if it's a sharp corner, it's going to be a turn sign versus a flatter one where you might have a curve sign. And with 2 or more curves, you'd have the reverse turn or reverse curve. The new MUTCD has changed this slightly. In the old MUTCD, it was one or the other. Speed was 30 or less, you chose the turn. Otherwise, you chose the curve sign. The current standard has changed to say you always put up at least the curve sign and you think about the turn sign. It's a should condition if it's 30 or less. The advantage of that is if you've got a corner that doesn't really feel sharp, you can leave it as a curve sign. But really, you need to document why you decide to stay with the curve sign, the ones on the right, if it's 30 miles an hour or less than your advisory speed. And then, of course, for 3 or more, you'd have the winding road sign, though you may want to sign an individual curve to make that work better for you. So, got a picture for you. I'm driving down the road. I found this picture. Okay, I'll blow it up so you can see it a little bit easier. It's a curve sign with a 15-mile-an-hour turn. And you can actually see down at the bottom of the hill, there is a chevron, not chevron, an arrow that sticks out to the left, and it's a 40-mile-an-hour speed. Do you see the concern? I hope you do. This is, what are we telling the public? So when you think about putting these signs up, drive it. Does it feel like a turn? You can leave that sign like it is. Or does it really feel like a sharp turn, like you're almost at an intersection? Then you definitely want the turn sign. So drive it and see how it feels, because how we do this, it wants to be uniform. And this one definitely felt to me like a turn. So I would have recommended that you put in the turn sign, not the curve sign in this particular case. Now, in terms of choosing that advisory speed, there are now 5 methods available. The compass, safety-based, and design equation all essentially have you go out and measure the roadway, how much of a turn it is, what's the radius, and using calculations, calculate what you're going to put for an advisory speed. If you've got a new pavement that's got really good super elevation and it's in good maintained shape, those equations will work. They're great to get you started. But if you've got any dips or dives, you don't have great super transition, elevation transitions, or there's something odd about the alignment, doesn't quite stay up like you'd expect, I really am a big fan of a direct measurement method, either with a ball bank or an accelerometer. You may have heard the Riker system, the state's using that. That's an accelerometer-based system. The ball bank is probably the one most of us are familiar with. It's a fairly simple device using a slope meter that's put into a sedan. If you've not seen one, they go like this. And we'll drive down the road here, and you'll see the little black ball. It's in some fluid. And as you drive around the roadway, that little black ball swings out. And if it goes above a certain amount, then you would set your advisory speed to be less than the speed you drove the roadway. So in this case, you'll see he gets up to speed on this first curve, and he's going about 25, 30 miles an hour when he hits it. And you can see the ball goes way up outside the range it's supposed to go. So in this case, you would want to assign that for particular speed. Now, again, we don't have time to do too much, but let me ask you this. Do you know how to use a ball bank? Yes, no, or what's a ball bank? And this is exactly why we're actually doing one special webinar specifically on the use of the ball bank to use to determine the proper advisory speed for curves. We're going to be doing that on May 6th, so essentially 2 weeks from today, specifically on how to use the ball bank, some lessons learned to help have everybody out in terms of doing a good job in your curve signage. Okay? So hopefully this will help you out. Now, once you put a curve sign up, okay, we can talk about where the sign should be. This one's not in a good spot. It needs to be before the curve. But when do you need the curve sign, and when do you need a supplemental plate? Okay, so once you decide to put them up, what's the requirements? Okay, the National MUTCD essentially says all curves on interstates that have an advisory speed need to be signed. No ifs, ands, or buts. Doesn't matter if there's traffic at all. For arterials and collectors, it depends whether it has markings or not. And for local roads, it's always just a may. You may do it. There's no requirement to do it. Okay? New York State DOT, with their supplement, is going to say, we don't care if the markings are there. If it's in the winter, you might not see the markings. They might have been worn off. So in New York State, essentially is if the traffic is low enough and you're in arterial or collectors, you may put one up. Okay? If the traffic is 1,000 to 3,000, you got the yellow. The yellow means you should do it. Okay? So again, they'll write this up when they actually do the table. So that'll be a should condition, the yellow. And then the red means you shall do it. So if you've got roads over 4,000 vehicles a day, then you shall put up horizontal alignment signs. Okay? And again, for local roads, it's always a may condition. That's the blue. But I'll tell you right now, I think from the standpoint of the public, you may still want to think about putting those signs up when you get higher traffic volumes. So again, how do we determine this? Well, again, go to your arterials and collectors, figure that out from the functional classification viewer. And then there's also a traffic data viewer. If you don't have traffic counts, that you can go and see if the state's done some traffic counts. And for a lot of the arterials and collectors, they have. And if you have a bridge or a roadway, they've done a count. So you can get a traffic count. In this particular case, I chose a road over in the Buffalo area because that's where my figure was from the functional classification viewer. And I looked at the data, and you can actually look at the data and see that it was in the range of about 3,000 vehicles a day, though it used to be about 4,000, which leads to an interesting question when you go back and look at the table. If it's traffic that's fluctuating between 3,800 and 4,200, does it fall under the should category or the shall category? Uh, Myself, if it's close, I'm going to put those signs up. Because remember, if you're not putting them up, if it's in that yellow area, if it's a should, you have to document why you decided not to do it. Uh, I don't think I'd want to take that one to court. I would probably just go ahead and put the sign up. Okay. Now, once you decide to put a sign up, even if you're in that may zone, even if you're on a local road, once you decide to put that sign up, there are some requirements. Again, the National MUTCD says you can have markings or an advanced sign if you're not slowing down the speed much, if you're going from 40 to 35, for instance. But again, New York State has said, again, those markings could get covered by snow, could get worn off. So signs are the V&T, the Vehicle and Traffic Law, priority anyway. So in New York State, if you're dropping the speed at all, you have to have the advanced sign. Okay? You have to have that plaque. So you really need to put that out there. If it's dropping the speed by 15 miles an hour or more, you need to have signs and delineators. State DOT is going to use chevrons in every single case with 15 or more, but they're going to, at least currently, their thinking is they'll let you still use delineators um, at 15 miles an hour. But again, that's something you need to think about what you're putting up. And when it comes to delineation for curbs, well, delineation, again, is a proven safety countermeasure for roadway departures. Because if you're not familiar with a curve, you don't know how sharp it is. An advanced sign can help you, but the delineation can really do a huge improvement. Okay? And you can add the lollipop stripes on the delineators for certain critical curves. But the key is to make sure you know what the curve looks like. So as you're going around the corner, you want to see as a three minimum three chevrons and or delineators at all times. In this case, you can clearly see there are four. On a nice foggy day, we were out doing a road investigation. You want to see a minimum of three as you're going around because that helps define a curve. 2 points doesn't. So you want to tighten those spacings up in a lot of cases, and there's standards for that. One of my favorite tools when you're deciding where to put your delineators is the humble traffic cone. Go grab your traffic cones, how many you think you need, lay out where you think your delineators are, put the cones down, okay? And then go drive that roadway and see, does it look good? Does it feel right? And by the way, please take the delineators all the way to the end of the curve. See, a lot of times we don't put them all the way to the end of the curve, and so we sort of haven't given the real information to people. Take them back to the point of tangent, okay? So you put your delineators up, and then you've got to know exactly where you want to drive your post, and you can call 811 before you do that, okay? So let's just see if you remember what I just said. And this time I'm going to give you a few seconds to do this one. And yep, you got it. Very good. 3 is a minimum. 4 is great. I'm okay with 4, but minimum of 3 that you've got there. Okay. Again, that helps define the curve. And you can always tighten it up. I'm okay with tightening it up, but minimum of 3 at all times. Now, there's some other cool things out there. If you've got particular corners that are really sharp that you could try to help improve the safety, okay? For instance, there are enhanced curve signs, and these are actually a high priority. Now, this particular picture, we're going to come back to it. Um, I'm going to ask you what you see in this picture that's incorrect. There are actually 2 things wrong with this with the current standards. One of them I will give you, and the other one I'll let you think about. The one I'm going to give you, and we'll see if my pen is working here. Yep, my pen is working. See if I like the color. I'm going to cross it out. There we go, cross it out. That's the blue there. Those signs that have the curve sign with the speed in the sign, they've been used improperly. Those are supposed to be supplemental signs. And this big one is where it belongs at the beginning of the curve as opposed to in advance of the curve because there's an advance sign behind where the picture was taken. But so many people use them incorrectly, they've actually dropped it. It's not in the MUTCD anymore. So essentially, what you need to have is you need to have the advance sign, okay? I know it's going to be bright yellow rather than that, but it's the advanced sign with whatever the speed was, and that would actually go pretty far back. Obviously, this isn't the proper location, but I just want you to realize that's the one I want to give you. I want you to think about what else is wrong in terms of this curve sign. But there's things you can do. You can enhance curve signs, and everybody thinks this is what they mean. You're going to put up a big sign that's electrified and blinks to warn people. Might even be dynamic, which we'll talk about in just a second. But enhanced warning signs for curves could be just like you have advanced signs for stop signs, where you put them on both sides of the roadway. You double the signs up. You make them bigger. Enhancing it, we know, reduces the number of crashes. Okay? And then someone asked a question, and this is perfect. We're going to talk about driver feedback and flashing beacon signs. There are lots of them out there. Now, the video that I've got for this of me walking across the road is for more of an intersection safety problem, and we're focused on roadway departures right now. So let's talk about some dynamic signs that are out there. And again, this is a proven item, okay? So what you'd have to have, though, is you have to have something that detects people's speeds, radar, lidar, something like that. And then you have to flash and give them information. I actually am not a fan of the speed too fast for curve text. Um, it is allowed, but I like to give them a number instead. So speed too fast for curve, maybe tell them what the curve speed should be. Okay, but again, you be careful with too much text. But the idea is a dynamic sign. And there are videos and stuff out there. And let's see if this one's going to show. Yeah, I'm gonna get rid of the sound for this one, just realizing it might not go through everybody's. But you can see the blinking signs. Some of them are dynamic where they actually react when a vehicle and they turn off when the vehicle's not coming by. Okay, so there are enhanced signs that you can put up, and those advanced signs can really help improve safety by quite a bit. Okay, so there's a speed dynamic. There's one that says slow down that highlights again when people are going too fast. Okay. And then the one on the right we've already seen. Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let me look at your questions. I'm going to put the next slide up there. How do you handle the speed feedback sign next to the advisory speed? Well, again, these signs were spaced too close together. They really should have been spaced further apart. There's something we call primacy. And the idea behind primacy is you space your signs out so people have time to read and react. You want to give them about 4 to 5 seconds between them. So essentially, one way to think about that is you take your speed limit on your roadway, and I don't like that color. We'll go with that color. And you're going to go 5 to 7 times the speed. In miles per hour, we'll give you the foot spacing, and we'll just use approximately 6. So if the speed limit were 55 miles an hour, people are probably going 60. So 6 times 60 is 360 feet. We'd really like to have that kind of spacing between the signs if it's a high-speed roadway, okay? Delineation's different. Delineation is not the same as the main signs. That's helping them define the curve. We're talking about the main sign. So your feedback sign and your advanced, any extra curve signs, you want to spread them out. And yeah, you could tighten them up a little bit, but remember, people need to have time to read and react. Um, and then the feedback sign is supposed to have this sign with it. How do you have a posted speed limit sign next to a different advisory speed? Well, again, those should be spread out, okay? And you have to be careful about that. And then what's the minimum standard? Well, there are some minimums. 200 feet is the typical minimum that you'll see. But if you don't give people time to read and react, you're going to have a problem. And then last question that's in this one is, does the MUTCD allow for camera speed enforcement collected on any of these signs? No. And the reason for that is not the MUTCD, it's actually the vehicle and traffic law. The vehicle and traffic law talks about regulatory signs. Remember, these are all warning signs, okay? So if you want to have a speed feedback camera, it has to have a regulation that would be a white and black sign that would go in that you could do the cameras. And there are laws they're trying to pass, and I don't know where they stand for work zone speed enforcement. And those would be laws that would have to be passed. It has to be a regulatory sign. And we're talking about warning signs right now. Okay. And then someone added, probably would make the most sense to tell them what the speed should be, than tell them what their speed is on the next sign. Yeah, that's actually why I like to actually have something that tells you what's going on, or even a combination sign is allowed, where you actually give them both sets of information next to each other. There's ways to do that that don't confuse them too much. So did anybody in the Q&A tell me what is wrong? We already talked about the fact that we know there's some issues with this sign. And we've already talked a little bit about this feedback sign having issues, but did you catch the other item that's got a problem? Let's see if everybody else catches it. There's one more item in here that I hope you catch. And yep, we're in good shape time-wise. The chevron spacing. Yeah, it might not, and it might be a non-breakaway post. Yeah, those posts, they look frangible to me. They might be okay. But the biggest issue I see is the spacing on those chevrons, because really, we haven't given good information to people. There really needs to be one more chevron here. Remember, we want to give them a definition on the curve. If that sign spacing isn't consistent, we don't give them good definition. So you may want to think about that. There might have been a driveway there. It might have gotten knocked down. I don't know the history of this particular site enough to know that. And then the other thing I can't tell from the photograph is, did they take the chevrons all the way around to the end of the curve? Really does help define the curve even better. Okay. Now let's pick our controversial one of the day, because I know a lot of people have very strong opinions about what everybody calls shards in cars, or rumble strips. Okay. Shards, shoulder audible roadway delineators, that's where the acronym comes from, is a primary tool for reducing rollover and fixed object crashes. Two of those three roadway departure issues. And they're really good on tangents, though even though they're not listed for curves, they can help curves as well. Cars, centerline audible roadway delineators, are really good for stopping, of course, head-ons. And again, primarily on tangents, but they can be very helpful on curves as well, but they're not a primary tool. So let's just, before I go into this a little bit, let me ask the question. I want you to raise your hands. Here we go. How many of you have driven on a road and you've gone over a rumble strip and realized you were leaving the lane? We're not recording this. Well, we're recording the video and we'll post that, but we're not recording your answers. Nobody will see those. If you don't raise your hand, you probably haven't driven a lot. We've all probably done it or been in a car with somebody who's done and run over a rumble strip. So we know they work. We have very good evidence to say they're strongly valuable, but they do have some things we have to be aware of. Okay? So when it comes to shards and the shoulder rumbles, you do need to think about the fact there may be bicyclists, and you have vehicles that might get off onto the shoulder. Okay? While the center line might be more of a continuous activity that you deal with. But rumble strips are there to really help that distracted or drowsy driver, or somebody who's just wandered a little bit more than we'd expect. Okay? They can even help with light snow cover. And I've actually had this happen to me, where you're driving down, you're not sure where the lane is. So they can be very helpful in that particular respect. So I'm a fan of rumble strips, but we'll talk about location here in just a second. Now, I'm going to give you something that I will admit is the one thing that drives me nuts when it comes to rumble strips. The definition for a rumble strip, the length of the rumble strip is not going down the roadway, which is what you and I would talk about. The length of the rumble strip is the lateral dimension, how wide you and I would talk it. But when you see the term length, they're talking about the dimension. In this particular case, it's the dimension not of the rumble groove, but the width. Okay, oh, my pen has got a color you're not going to see. That white on white doesn't really work too well. So essentially, it's this dimension here, laterally. Okay, that's the length they're talking about. Okay. Now, what do they mean by that? Well, essentially, most shoulder rumbles are 12 to 18 and 16 inches, excuse me, long. In other words, what you and I would think of as the width. Okay. You might just put one right next to the edge line down to 8 to 12 inches. Heck, they've even put in 4 to 6 inch installations when you got limited space. Then may not be as effective, but again, they can still help. So it's something you might want to think about if you've got limited space and you think rumbles might help you. could be very, very useful. Okay. Some agencies actually purposely put the rumble strip on the edge line. The center line's already always done, but the edge line right where they're putting the rumble, and they're called stripes. Okay, and they usually highlight the E, enhanced. I don't know, maybe that's what the E stands for. But you can see that vertical face actually keeps the beads lasting a little bit longer. You still have the exact same problems that you might have in terms of pavement or water, but that can be helpful to add to it. And in terms of the crash modification factors, as you can see, this is for rural two-lane roads and traffic's 5 to 22,000 vehicles, so pretty high volumes. For crashes that are all KA, all fatality and serious crash incidents, about a 15% reduction in the number of those crashes and a pretty small standard error. It's about a 25% reduction in opposite direction crashes, but there's a bit of an error, large amount of error there, but it's certainly going to helpful with those severe crashes. Okay. If you're worried about the water issue and the drainage issue, what some states have started doing is they actually either put a seal down, a fog seal or a chip seal over the rumble, because if you look on the left, you put a rumble strip down, you're actually damaging the surface. You're actually breaking and letting water in. And that's why a lot of people are concerned, especially on a road that's a little bit older. You've got to be careful where you apply the rumble strip. But again, Washington State's actually putting chip seals and fog seals right over the top. It reduces their effectiveness a little bit, but it keeps the integrity and the seal on the surface. And the rumble strips don't tend to hold a lot of water if you put them in the right location. Now, see if you remember, rumble strips reduce injury and fatal crash rates in rural areas by how much? Very good. Very good. Yep. You got it. 15%. Yeah. Okay. We know they have their place, but let's just be honest. They're not going to be everywhere. You're not going to put them in all locations. And then our last one for today is I just want to briefly mention lighting. Again, it's not a high priority item, but it is something you might want to think about. And again, we more commonly see them like where I've got the photograph in an urban area, but they can be used in rural areas, especially on curves, and especially, of course, nighttime. And the reason why this is valuable is that they see about a 28%, 25%, a quarter of the crashes are reduced, the injury crashes, in both rural and urban areas. So if you want to think about lighting, that could be a proven countermeasure that you might want to add for a particular location. Okay, so just something to think about. And by the way, if you've got curves that are unexpected, lighting can be of extreme value in that particular case. Now, again, we've done our first of our 3 countermeasure webinars. We're going to be doing a lot more on roadway geometry next week, and then the barrier systems and local road safety plans the week after next. But let's just ask for today, okay? And then we'll go through your other questions that you can throw in the Q&A. Please throw your questions in the Q&A. Which ones of these are you thinking about trying? Okay? And I'll actually go ahead and pop up the responses and we'll see what people are saying. So which ones are you thinking about trying? And by the way, one of the things you can do, and I'm a big fan of, is try it in a couple of spots. Do a pilot program, and I'll talk about that to finish up our webinar here in just a second, how you might do that. Yeah. So yeah, good. Good to see. Let's see if anybody caught the groove markings. Nobody commented on it. I got away with that one, but groove markings. Yeah, E and F. Okay. Good. So let's see what other questions you guys have. We'll answer those and then finish up with the quick discussion about the funding and where we're headed from here. Okay. So questions you've got for shard insulations, what your experience would you have would be first, the shards or the pavement markings? Oh, you absolutely want to put down the shards first, or even the cards. You want to put down your grooves first and then stripe. Now, if they're offset, it's not that critical. Okay, if you're putting down the line and then the shoulder rumble strip is outside of that, that's not as critical. But if you want to put them on top of each other or right next to each other, put the rumble down first. And the center lines, you always want to put the rumbles down first because you're going to be grooving right out those center lines otherwise. And there is some evidence that that can actually distract people and make them think somehow that it's a passing zone. So you do want to go in and do the rumble first in that particular case. Okay. And they're all set, but worried about the pavement markings being disturbed. Yeah, it is more likely. So again, if you can, you want to put down the shard of the card first. Um, and for that 6 times speed spacing, is that based on 1.44 feet per second or for the 4 seconds? Well, it's based on, you can do some calculations. It's really just a matter, that's an approximate number of how much time between the signs. It's really just a matter of giving people time to read and react, read and react. And we know we want to give people about 2.5 seconds to read and react. And being a little conservative, a little bit more spacing if we can get it. Okay, that's where that comes from. There's nothing in the MUTCD about it. This is just the folks have found in the world of traffic engineering is to spread the signs out if you possibly can. Now, I hope to see you on some additional webinars that we'll be doing over the next couple of weeks. Next Tuesday and, no, excuse me, next Thursday. That's right, next Tuesday I got another conflict. So next Thursday we'll be doing proven countermeasures for pavements and geometry. And then the following, no, it is Tuesday. I'm see my brain, my calendar is just insane. So Tuesday the 29th, proven countermeasures for pavements and geometry. Thursday, proven countermeasures for safe recovery. And then the following Tuesday, the ball bank use. And don't forget, if you are looking in those funds, $90 million due June 13th. If you have any questions, you can contact the state on that particular one. And then I'll answer your questions in just a second, but I don't want you to forget. We'll just let you answer this question. While we're doing that, I'll look at your questions. Are you planning to put in a grant? Okay. Okay, let's just see what you guys come up with for an answer, and then I'll answer your question there. And you're not sure, and that's great. That's actually the answer I expected most people would say is, I'm not sure. That's why I'm on this webinar. That's good. Okay. It's a way to try something out. If you don't want to apply for that particular grant process, I can understand it, though I will tell you, raise your hand, go over and raise your hand if you have a local road safety plan. Raise your hand if you have a local road safety plan. Okay. Not a lot of you raised your hand. If I had to pick the one thing I'd like everybody to have is a local road safety plan. So apply for that. There's money available to do a local road safety plan. So go and get a local road safety plan. There's $10 million set aside. And I would actually try to do it at a county level. So get all the towns, all the villages, all the cities, get the county, get everybody together and do a local road safety plan so that everybody is on the same page. And then it actually would help you for other grants. For instance, this is a segue. Do you have a local road safety plan? If you have one, you can get money from the US DOT directly. They have another grant. These are direct funds through the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, and that's due on June 26th. But in that case, if you want to do an implementation grant, you have to have a local road safety plan. So go get yourself a local road safety plan. If you are doing either of these projects, you're going to be doing federal aid, just so you know. And if you've not done federal aid, you may want to come see us on the 22nd of May, where we're talking about the local federal aid process and reviewing that. If you've not done a local project before, or it's been a while, you might want to come sit in on that. And that's going to be a 3.5 hours plus a Q&A of half an hour that you can come and listen and talk about the federal aid process itself. So my last question, and I'll get you out of here right on time, is can a municipality install lighting on a roadway that is not a hotspot or in a local road safety plan because it's a proven countermeasure? And that's a good question. It's been asked by us. In other words, let's say I want to put up signage. Okay. So as an example, I want to put MUTCD signage up. I don't have a local road safety plan. It's an arterial, but it doesn't fit some of the other categories. The answer is yes, you can. But remember, you're competing with other folks. It's a grant. So local road safety plan, you're probably going to get that. If you've got a local road safety plan, you're going to be much more competitive. So yes, you can apply. You are eligible, but now you're competing with others. Should you go ahead and do it? Well, you might as well, because I don't know how many people are going to apply. So until we know that, it might be worth trying to apply it. Okay. And then somebody else put a note about the fact that Onondaga County and City of Syracuse have a plan, but they don't meet all the criterion for SS4A, but they would meet the criterion for the state's roadway departure funds. And again, New York State is allowing you, if you have a local plan that doesn't meet the federal criterion for local road safety plans, and they're a little bit more stringent, you can still apply and use that as long as it's data driven. That's the key with any of these plans, are they data driven? Okay. And we'll talk more about that in the webinar coming up. I guess it would be a week from today, where we talk about local road safety plans. And with that, I thank you. Any more questions? Any more questions? No more questions. Well, then I'm going to give you back. Oh, my clock. That's right. My clock is a little bit slow, so I'm not giving you back that much time. Everybody have a great day. Get outside. It's a nice day. Enjoy, and we'll see you on another webinar next week. Bye-bye.